I got like 12 minutes into recording this video and then my phone ran out of space. So I'm gonna lightning round this and get through the list again. Here are my reasons why low-level play in 5th edition just kind of sucks. I recommend you never play 5th edition below 3rd level, and probably you want to start that campaign at 5th, to be honest. So, low-level play, I define as definitely levels 1 through 3. I also usually include level 4 in this. Level 5 is where the game really begins. And I would not be able to cite a source, but I seem to recall that the designers actually said during 5th edition's development that you are meant to start at level 3. And that levels 1 and 2 are there for like new players learning the game, which I don't agree with, or and for like multi-classing attacks, basically, so that you don't get everything that you need to be a full, complete character just by dipping 1 level into a class. That is why levels 1 and 2 exist. Level 3 is the start of the game. Level 5 is where the game is actually tolerable. So, number 1, low-level characters don't have enough hit points. This comes out, what this does, basically, is levels 1, 2, 3, you don't have enough hit points to take more than, like, 1 or 2 hits from an enemy before going down, and nearly anything that rolls a critical hit against you will take you down to 0. You just have so few hit points, you're incredibly fragile, and it's a bad feeling. It also makes combat really swingy because of this. You can't handle too many monsters because just the sheer number, like even if their the damage dice are really small, like D3s, too many of them will stack up. Like you can only take so much damage. Which, I mean, as an absolute statement is true at any level. But in actual practice, like, you just can't handle very many monsters at low levels because combat gets really swingy, and a few lucky rolls one way or the other, and the fight just ends. Most goblins can be taken out in 1 hit. That is, of course, by design. They have, like, 4 hit points, 5 hit points? But when player characters only have, like, 10 hit points, well, a D6 weapon that crits can easily do that, even with no modifiers, and most things have bonuses. So you don't have enough hit points, and it's a feel bad, and it restricts the kinds of encounters that you can have. You also don't have enough resources in general. Resources being hit points, of course, hit dice, spell slots, any kind of expendables, channel divinities, those kinds of things. Anything you can expend. You don't have enough to get through an adventuring day. It's one of the reasons why the adventuring day is such a flawed concept to begin with, because at low levels, you simply don't have enough resources to get through the 6 to 8 combat encounters that it suggests. And at higher levels, you have way too many resources, and you will not have them all expended by the end. And by higher levels, I mean like right around level 8 or 9. Is when the adventuring day starts to be too short. If you have spellcasters. So you don't have enough resources, which means that your adventuring days have to be short, which is less satisfying. They have to be short, and they have to be easy, because you just don't have enough, you don't have enough meat on your character, enough resources to sort of, you can think of resources like a crumple zone. You hit something challenging, and so you crumple a bit, you expend resources until you get down to the hard part, which is your character living or dying. So your crumple zones aren't big enough yet to sustain the hit of hard encounters or really big encounters, really interesting encounters, or a lot of encounters. So you don't have enough resources. You also don't have enough character building options. Most classes don't even get a subclass until level 3. Unless you're playing a variant human or versatile heritage, more or less the same thing. You probably don't even have a feat until minimum level 4. Later if you're multiclassing. So what this does is that it makes the characters feel really generic, because they don't really have a lot of opportunities to differentiate themselves from the baseline generic version of their class, which is kind of boring. And you don't really get a way to like create a definition for your character, an identity for your character, mechanically speaking. You don't have a way to create the play experience that you are looking to create. You also, and this point mainly only applies to spellcasters, you don't have very many turn-by-turn options, separate from character building options. You don't have a lot of options on a turn-by-turn basis. If you run into a problem, either some sort of obstacle to overcome or you are in a fight, you're probably going to be relying on whatever it is that your character does at will. So you have like, your one attack cantrip, because you only have like 3 cantrips to start with. So, you got one attack cantrip and then a couple of utility cantrips. So you're going to just be doing that over and over. You don't have enough resources to sort of spend them on luxury spells willy-nilly. Who spends a spell slot on magic missile at low levels? No, you're going to be doing like Firebolt or Toll the Dead or Ray of Frost or whatever it is that you're doing. Searing Flame. Just over and over. Weapon users are just going to be doing their bonks over and over. You don't have any special abilities. Now, weapon users mainly don't get special abilities later anyways. So this point doesn't really apply to them. But spellcasters are at their most boring at low levels because they don't have enough options to be able to make interesting decisions from turn to turn. And then the 5th point is that monsters are boring. So nearly all monsters at low levels are meant to just go forward and hit you, and they can do nothing else. This is a problem actually at all levels, but it is most pronounced at low levels because there's so few exceptions. There's more exceptions to this rule later. I actually did record a video about monsters and their bad design in 5th edition. I didn't upload it because I wasn't really satisfied with the arguments that I made, on account of how many exceptions there are amongst iconic monsters like dragons and beholders and things like that. But low-level monsters, your goblins, your kobolds, your orcs, whatever, the things that you're going to be fighting at level, let's say 5 and below, are really boring. Like, they don't do anything. They might have some special abilities that give them additional damage or resistances or things like that. Nothing that changes how they play. They just go forward and they hit you. Nearly always only melee. Some of them have ranged options that are significantly worse than in melee, but nearly always they're melee-only characters that go forward. I think I just got an errant look from someone who was wondering what I was doing. They're like either strictly melee or primarily melee. They go forward and they hit you. That's super boring. And then you just hit them back until they run out of hit points. And there's nothing really special going on there. There's no designed play experience for these monsters. So the fights end up being kind of boring. You just, sprinkle the battlefield with, enough monsters so that they have enough hit points. It takes you a little while to whittle them down to 0. And they're going to go forward and they're going to hit you unless you decide to spend one of your very few resources, put down a web, stop them. I'm not saying there's no tactical play. I'm saying that by and large, the monsters are not contributing to the interestingness of the encounter. You kind of have to really lean into special terrain or, alternate wind conditions and things like that to actually make the scenarios interesting. As you get higher and higher levels, you get more and more leeway to do these kinds of things, to fill the battlefield with monsters, which makes it more interesting because more hazards, more things going on the battlefield is more interesting. More stuff to keep track of. And also more challenging, as it turns out. So that's a win-win. So those are the 5 big reasons. Lack of hit points, lack of resources in general, which I do consider separate points, though they are obviously related. Lack of character building options, lack of turn-by-turn options, and boring monsters. These reasons combine to make low-level play, that is Tier 1 play in 5th edition, really boring, really bad, just kind of upsetting, to be honest. I don't recommend it for anyone. And here's the big thing, is that the big underlying point is that when I play D&D, I don't know about you, but when I play D&D, I'm playing it as a power fantasy. I've made a video on this in the past. This is the primary reason why people play D&D. You want to play a hero, you want to play someone who is influential in the world, you want to play someone who can make a difference, someone who is competent, someone who is powerful. It is a power fantasy. This is not a negative thing. This is the primary reason to play D&D. And low levels do not deliver. There are no powerful low level characters. Levels 1 through 3, you're always going to be this kind of like really fragile, mostly incompetent, very limited scrub is like the best term I can think of to describe it. You're this little like chud guy who doesn't really do a lot and is kind of easy to take down, to be honest. Some adventurers try to paint low level characters as being like, you know, these intrepid heroes. They're not. They're often on par with commoners, like, or sometimes even lower in some cases. So low-level play just kind of sucks, especially for me. I'm looking for a power fantasy. I'm looking to play the hero. I'm looking to play, you know, these dynamic, heroic characters. And 5th edition does not deliver on this in general. It is super does not deliver on low levels. I hate playing low-level 5th edition. It's basically the worst experience. It's the worst way to play the game, to be honest. I would say low level is worse than high level. I also recommend people don't play 5th edition above 12th level. Because as soon as you start getting 7th level spells, which kick in at level 13, you start running into a lot of problems. The game kind of stops functioning really at that point. But I would rather play high-level D&D than low-level D&D, because at least at high-level D&D, there's shenaniganry, and you have agency within the game. You don't have a lot of agency at low level just because there's not a lot your character can do. You don't have the options, you don't have the resources, you don't have the crumple zones. So, anyways, that's why I think low-level 5th edition D&D is one of the worst ways to play D&D.